Welcome and thanks for listening to the Way Bible Church podcast. Here at The Way, we're all about life change, and we pray that as you listen to these hope-filled messages that you would be transformed by the love of Jesus. To find out more about us and our service times, location, events, and more, visit twbcss.com today. Surprise! I am here before you today with no guitar strapped to me. So please, I apologize if I'm like a Ricky Bobby and I don't know what to do with my hands. It's just I'm getting used to it. Okay, first service went all right. I didn't do anything weird, hopefully. So we're going to try to keep it that way. As Pastor Joel said in that video, we're in a sermon series and serve campaign this month called Say Yes. Somebody say yes. Amen. You said it. So you got to hold to it, okay? That's all about putting feet to your faith. And you've heard people get up here. By the way, if you don't know me, my name's Abby. I'm over all worship and production here at The Way. And you hear people get up here all the time and they say, I've got the best job on staff. And they've all lied to you because I do. And so today, as we are continuing in this series, we're putting feet to our faith and we're giving you guys opportunities to go and serve. Man, how many of you know that Wednesday nights, Sunday mornings, extracurriculars, groups, all that stuff doesn't just happen. It takes people to be faithful, to follow God in what he wants them to do. And so today, that's our prayer for you, is that you would say yes to stepping up and serving and having a heart for this house. Now today, if you've got your Bible, turn to Psalm 92. If you've got a paper Bible, that's going to be about halfway through it, okay? If you don't have a paper Bible, use your phone. If you don't have a phone, use an iPad. If you don't have an iPad, then the wall of truth back here behind me is going to tell you everything you need to know, okay? But Psalm 92, and the title of today's message is Followers Who Flourish. Somebody say flourish. Followers who flourish. And I want you to know today that God's heart for you as his follower is to flourish. So we're going to define that word, what it means to be planted, and what it means to love the house of the Lord. So if you're there, say I'm there. All right, let's start in verse 12, Psalm 92, verse 12. It says, the righteous will flourish, say flourish, like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon, planted in the house of the Lord. They will flourish in the courts of our God. They will still bear fruit in old age. That's good news for some of you. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming the Lord is upright. He is my rock. There is no wickedness in him. Let's pray this morning. Dear Lord, help me. Amen. Okay. So I need help. You need help. We all need help. So what does the word flourish mean? Now, when I was in college, I had a professor, and he didn't call Google. He didn't go on the Yahoo. He didn't go on the internet. He called it the Google machine. And I love that, so that's what I looked up, what the word flourish means this week. I looked it up on the Google machine. And the Google machine told me this. Flourish means of a person, animal, or other living organism to grow or develop in a healthy or vigorous way, especially as a result of a particularly favorable environment. So some of you already know where I'm going to go with this today. But flourishing means thriving. It means growing. It means prospering. It means being a blessing. It means having spiritual growth. That's what flourishing means. And we don't really use the word flourish a lot. It'd be very church girl of me if someone came up to me in the parking lot or something like, hey, how are you? And I say, I'm flourishing. I'm flourishing. Right? Put that in your Instagram bio, ladies. I'm flourishing. But what he does compare us to in this psalm is trees, two different types. And for some of us, we're like, don't compare me to a tree. That's kind of awkward. I feel tall already. But he compared us to two trees. The first tree he compared us to is a cedar tree. And cedar trees are known for their durability. A lot of you probably have a hope chest that's made out of cedar, right? They've lasted throughout the years. They're pleasant to look at. They're pleasing to smell. I'm not going to call you out if that does not describe you today. But he calls us cedar trees. And so, for example, Solomon, when he built his temple, he actually made the columns and the posts and the beams and the roof out of cedar. Why? Because he knew that cedar is durable. It's meant to last for generations. So in this psalm, we're compared to cedar, and we're also compared to the palm tree. And palm trees are always symbolic of triumph and victory. And we just had the Olympics here, Go at USA. We won the most medals, I think. We definitely won in breakdancing, because I don't know if y'all saw that, but that was an absolute nightmare. Man, I don't get it. Anyway, in the Corinthian Olympics, when someone won the top prize, normally what do they give them? A gold medal, right? They give them a gold medal. But in the Olympic Games, in the Corinthian Olympic Games, they gave them a palm branch. And I know what you're thinking, what a ripoff. But that palm branch actually signified that they had the victory. that they were a person of triumph. And then when Jesus rode in famously on the donkey into Jerusalem, it was called the triumphal entry. And what they were saying when they were waving the palm branches at him was, he has victory. He's the king. He's riding into town. Here comes the king. So we're compared to cedar that lasts and that's durable. We're compared to a palm tree that has triumph and victory. And so we read that psalm and we ask the question, who will flourish? Well, it tells us directly. Scripture says, those who are planted, somebody say planted. Those who are planted in the house of the Lord, they will flourish in the courts of our God. And before we get too far, I want you to hear me say this. It never said those who have a perfect attendance record at church and come every Wednesday and every Sunday without fail will flourish in the courts of our God. It never said that. It said those who are planted in the house of the Lord will flourish in the courts of our God. And you may be going to church, but you're not flourishing. It's very possible, right? You could, instead of being spiritually flourishing, you could be spiritually dry. You're still coming to church, but you're spiritually dry. Instead of thriving emotionally, you might be emotionally withering. Man, it's just been a rough few years for you, and it feels like you can cry at the drop of a hat, and you're just emotional all the time. It's very possible. Instead of being connected relationally, you might be relationally barren. You feel like you're all alone. You don't have anyone in this world, right? Instead of being spiritually fulfilled and making a difference and full of joy, you may find yourself searching, just looking for something that's going to fill the void in your life that is not what you need to be searching for. And so I want you to hear me say that if you've got a perfect attendance record at church, that doesn't mean that you're flourishing. But it says those who are planted in the house of God are the ones who are going to flourish. And so what does that mean today? What does flourishing mean? Well, we need to know something before we can know that your life is a seed. Your life is a seed. Now, I'm going to give you a disclaimer. I know nothing about plants. Nothing. All I know is that when I go to Juan Pablo's and I walk in to eat my chips and salsa, their plants look amazing every time. And they always change. And I'm like, who did this? It's amazing. If you know who did it, give them a shout out on Facebook to this week. I don't know. It looks amazing all the time, but I could not tell you how to get there. Could not tell you. Whatever the opposite color of green is, that's what color thumb I have. I don't know anything. Everything I've tried to keep alive dies. And so I just preface everything. I don't know anything about plants. Okay, so much that when I was about 6 years old, I would go spend time with my granny in the summer. And I was walking along because I was an only child and I had to entertain myself. And I saw this stick on the ground. And wouldn't you know it, it was the prettiest stick you have ever seen. It was green. It had these little thorn things on it. And I was like, you know what? I am 100% sure that if I plant this stick in the ground, it's going to grow a flower. Was 100% sure. Never been, well, I have been now, more sure of things in my life. But at that ripe age of 6 years old, no one could tell me any different. This stick was going to grow a flower. And so because my granny's job was to love me and not correct me in that moment, and probably for her own entertainment, she was like, man, she is so dumb. God bless her. She is so dumb. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip that stick out of the ground when she's not here, and I'm going to plant a flower in its place. So when I went back to her house, I saw the flower there, and I was like, I'm a genius. I'm a genius. I knew it. I knew it was going to sprout up this flower. And so that is my extent of knowledge about plants today. Okay, that's the baseline. That's the baseline. Ain't too, what is it? Pastor G says that he's like too or cool to be, embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed by that. I was 6 years old. So today, that's what I know about plants, but I do also know two things. Pretty simple. There are seeds that are planted, and there are seeds that are not planted. There are seeds that are planted, and there are seeds that are not planted. Basic plant knowledge, okay? And the seeds that are planted have all the potential. The seeds that are planted have all the potential because they're living where they're supposed to live. They're doing what they're supposed to do. The planted seed has all the potential to grow and to thrive and to multiply and to produce fruit and to be a blessing to others. It's fulfilling its purpose as a seed if it's planted. But if it's not planted, it lies dormant. It can never be fruitful. It's unproductive. It's dissatisfied. It's not fulfilling its purpose. And it doesn't matter how many times I go to Lowe's and I walk by this pretty little sack of seeds for wildflowers, they are never going to become a wildflower unless they get planted in the ground. That's just how it works. And so if your life is a seed, we need to know a couple principles about planting and seeds. And the first is this: seeds can't grow unless they're planted. Seeds can't grow unless they're planted. And who flourishes? those who are planted, say planted, in the house of God. And it reminds me, in Matthew 13, Jesus has his disciples and his followers around, and he tells them a story, a parable called the parable of the sower. And sower, you could also say, is gardener or farmer or planter. And he's telling them the story about different types of seeds and how they fall and what they do. And so he says that the sower sows the seed, the planter plants the seed, and it falls on the path or the hard ground. And what actually happened to this seed, because it never was protected by the cover of ground, it was never planted, the birds actually came and they ate that, they stole it. And so that seed never had an opportunity to grow. It never had an opportunity to grow. This represents somebody who has a really hardened heart towards the Lord. They're sinful. They don't want anything to do with faith. They don't want anything to do with Jesus. And because of that, they can never be planted. That's what that represents. And then he says the sower sows the seed, and some of the seed falls on rocky ground. Somebody say rocky ground. And what actually happened to that seed is that it did get planted a little bit, but the ground was really shallow and rocky. And so when the heat came and when the storm came, what actually happened is its roots were never that deep. And because its roots were never that deep, it withered and it died when the storm came, when the hardness of life came, when the heat came upon it. That's the rocky ground. And then he said some of the seed fell on thorny ground. And I think a lot of us are there today. We're in the thorny ground. And this represents somebody. It says that the seed fell on that ground, and the concerns or cares of life, as Jesus said, came up and choked it out. And what that represents is somebody who has received God. They believe in God. They've been planted, right? But then they let these thorns grow up in their life. The cares of this life, the finances, the debt, the job, the idols, the sin, the lusts, the people, the places. They let all these things grow up around them, and what that actually does, those are thorny. And they choke out the growth in the plant because it's surrounded by death. It's surrounded by death, and that's the thorny ground. And then it says some seeds fell on good soil. Somebody say good soil. And good soil is somebody who hears the word, believes the word, trusts in God, allows his word to take root in their life, and they are planted and they begin to grow. It represents true salvation that bears fruit, and it represents somebody who is flourishing. So Jesus talks about lives as seeds. He talks about the different types of seeds and the different types of soil that they fall in, and he's using it to explain to his followers and disciples how there are different responses to the saving grace of God. Not everybody responds to salvation. Not everybody responds to the gospel the same way. Some people choose to not believe it. Some people can't believe it. Some people shy away from it. Some people believe it, but they haven't gotten planted yet, so they might wither up and they might fail and falter in their faith. Some people believe it, and then they replace the goodness of God with the bad, old, sinful things that they once clung to, and that ends up choking their spiritual growth out. And some people remain planted in good soil. They grow, and they bear much fruit. So seeds can't grow unless they're planted. And today I know none of you in this room, none of you watching with us online, would ever say this sentence. But maybe sometime you have. Because I have. I'll be honest with you, I have. You've said, are we going to church today? None of you said it this morning, I promise. Are we going to church today? And we ask this question and we say, man, I'm really tired. We had a long weekend and I just, are we going to church today? Is it really worth it? Or we've got backpacks to pack because school's starting, and I know that's a stressful thing. I don't even have children. I was a child, and I don't want to be one again, okay? It's just a lot. And so I get it. You're asking this question, are we going to church? Or, man, my ex is here. That's super awkward. Maybe I'll just stay home today because I don't want to have to deal with that. We ask that question, or maybe sometimes for you, you treat the church like a country club. And what I mean by that is you only come and you only give and you only participate to the level that which you like the product. You're in it for the benefits. You came last week and they ran out of donuts, so you're like, I'm not going to come back this week. You came last week and you had an awkward encounter with someone you weren't expecting to see, so in order to avoid it, you're just not going to come to church anymore. You came last week and you didn't like the song we sang, or you didn't get fed. You didn't get what you needed or wanted out of church. And can I challenge you, when you're actually planted, when you are planted in the house of the Lord, when you love the house more than you love yourself, you're not going to ask, are we going to church? And you're not going to ask what's in it for me, because you realize that church is not a destination. Church is an identity. Church is not a destination. Church is an identity. It has never once been about gathering in a nice building. I don't know if y'all knew where the disciples and all them were gathering. It wasn't a nice building most of the time. It's never been about a great program. It's never been about, man, my kids are taken care of. It's never been about donuts and coffee. It's never been about cool lights and sound and worship. It's never been about a really charismatic pastor. It's always been about an identity that God has placed in his followers, that they are his church. And because they are his church, they gather together to be unified, to honor God, to corporately hear the word of God, to use their gifts, to worship Jesus, to encourage each other. And so ultimately, it's not about what happens inside the church building on a Wednesday night or a Sunday morning or in a small group. It's that we are the church. We are the church. And because we are planted and have a united vision and mission and goal, we can then go into the world Monday through Saturday, strong, called out, planted, able to share the love of Jesus with anyone we encounter, because we don't gatekeep the church. We fling open the gates wide and say, all who enter will know him. All who enter will be saved. So you're not going to treat the church like a country club when you know it's not about you, but it's about him. You're not going to look for what you can get out of the church when you know it's not about you, it's about him. And he died for his church, and he's coming back for his church. That's what church is. And so if you want to be planted in the house of the Lord, you have to be willing to separate yourself, your desires, your pride, your preference. You have to be willing to remember that it's not about this building or this program, and it's about the Lord. God, would you lead us into a repentance for when we go to church, for when we check it off a list, when we make it this thing that it was never meant to be. Lord, would you help to encourage us to gather, to have a heart for each other, right? Today, I want to tell you this, that when you're planted, your roots will grow deep. When you're planted, when you're truly planted, your roots will grow deep. Jeremiah 17:8 says this. They're like trees planted along a riverbank with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees are not bothered by the heat or worried by long months of drought. Their leaves stay green and they never stop producing fruit. They never stop producing fruit. The roots reach deep down into the water. And for some of you right now, you feel like you're experiencing great heat. And I'm not talking about, it feels like it's 106 and humidity outside. It's like a lot. I'm not talking about that kind of heat. I'm talking about pressure. I'm talking about chaos. I'm talking about your schedule is bearing down on you. Your finances are bearing down on you. You just feel like there's heat coming at you from all sides. Or some of you feel like you're dry and you're kind of just drifting like a tumbleweed and you don't know what to do or where you're going. It's been a long time since you've felt anything or you've heard from the Lord, right? So you might feel heat. You might feel drought in your life in that way. But this says when your roots grow deep, they're not bothered by heat and they're not bothered by drought because they're connected underground to a source who is Jesus that is greater than any problem that's on the surface. That's what being planted means. It's not about a destination. It's about an identity. Being planted in God. Being planted underground to a source. And this summer, I got to go to Northern California. Was not as scary as you would think. And I got to see the redwood trees. And if you've never seen these, I would try to explain it to you, but I really can't. It's just the most majestic, magical, beautiful, wonderful place I've ever been. Constantly 68 degrees. And these trees are just, you can't even fathom how big they are. You can't even fathom it. I've never experienced or seen anything like it before. But I looked up some facts about these trees, and they're actually the tallest living things on this planet. And they can grow to be 30 stories high. And they can be up to 3 stories wide. I saw it with my own eyes. Can't comprehend it, but I saw it. And it says the root system can go down 100 feet, or out 100 feet, and down 150 feet. So by the end of this root system into the top of this tree could be 450 feet tall. Can't even explain it. But my favorite thing that I looked up and I found out about these trees is that because they are so massive and because their roots go down so deep and so wide underground, what actually ends up happening is that it's not just one tree's roots. These roots actually end up intertwining underneath the ground. They end up intertwining underneath the ground, and because they intertwine, when rain comes, when storm comes, when heat comes, when drought comes, these trees can stand the test of time, not only on their own strength, but on the strength of those around them. And is that not community? Is that not the church? Is that not what we're called to be and do? It's not just a bunch of planted people on their own out in a field randomly by themselves. It's a forest of trees. It's a flower bed. It's a field of wildflowers that are all connected. And as the church, when something happens on the surface, when heat comes, when drought comes, when storm comes, what actually ends up happening is this tree now has the strength of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 other massive trees, just like we can have in the church. When you don't have the strength on your own, guess what? Your roots are connected. Your roots are connected. And so when you have community within this house, when you are planted in the house of the Lord with other planted people, He can sustain you. He can give you strength even when you feel like you don't have it. He's with you in the heat, in the drought, in the storm, and there's no problem on the surface that can take away the strength that's underground. That's who He is. We need each other. I need you. You need me. That's what community is all about. And somebody in the room might have said, well, I tried coming to church. I've been coming to church for a few weeks now, and it just doesn't feel right. It feels awkward. It's kind of hard. I'm just not feeling it, right? It's not working out for me. I've tried. I really have tried. And can I remind you today and encourage you that it takes time for a tree to grow. It takes time for a tree to grow. It's not an overnight process. It takes time for a tree to grow. So my charge to somebody in the room today that is saying, man, I've tried. I can't find my place. Would you say yes to staying planted for a little while? That's when you see the growth. That's when the roots take hold, is when you say, yes, I'm going to stay planted in one place, even if it's hard, even if it's difficult, even if it's not the most ideal of circumstances sometimes. I'm going to stay planted because I know that it takes time for a tree to grow. It takes time for those roots to take hold. The word tells us don't give up when it comes to the house of the Lord, when it comes to us gathering together. In Hebrews 10, it actually says this in verse 23, let us hold tightly without wavering to the hope we affirm. For God can be trusted to keep His promise. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And let us not neglect our meeting together, as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of His return is drawing near. We've never needed each other more. We've never needed each other more. And if you allow yourself to get deeply rooted, those other roots will begin to intertwine with you. And that's what the church looks like. That support system, that community, that one body, one spirit, one heart, one mind. That's what the church was designed to be. So when you're planted, your roots grow deep. And the second thing is this: planted people produce fruit. Planted people produce fruit. In Jeremiah 17:8, it says this: they are like trees planted along a riverbank with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees are not bothered by the heat or worried about long months of drought. Their leaves stay green, and they what? They never stop producing fruit. Planted people produce fruit. And so what is fruit? I wish I could tell you today that it was like I could be like, yeah, peach. Got it. That's just not how it works. Unfortunately, I love peaches. I wish I could have one on demand at all times. That's not what the fruit is being talked about here. It's actually spiritual fruit. Paul is talking to the Galatians, and he's describing, because back then, Jesus is referred to, and now is referred to as the vine. And we are connected to the vine, and in those who are connected to the vine would bear much fruit. And so this fruit that he's talking about, you might have heard it called the fruit of the Spirit. And the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And nobody has any issue with any of those in the house today. That's what the supernatural fruit of our life looks like when we know Jesus. That's all Paul's saying here. But before we read about this fruit, he says something interesting in Galatians 5:13. It says, for you have been called to live in freedom. Somebody say freedom. My brothers and sisters. but don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. To serve one another in love. And I love, last week, Pastor Hunter preached a message all about the identity we have and the grace that was so freely given to us through Jesus. That there was no way in the world that we could ever work enough, do enough, or be enough to get to Jesus. Instead, Jesus came to us. That's the gift of God. That's eternal life. That's the gift of God. That is grace. That's the gift of God. That is mercy. And he talked about this, and I love that because for some of you, you heard that message and you were like, finally, I've been striving my entire life in every workplace I've ever been in every relationship I've ever been in, with my parents, with my friends. I just want people to like me. I want to do enough so that someone likes me. I want to do enough so that I can get to where I'm going. I want to do enough so that I can get enough. You've been striving your whole life, and for some of you, you heard him say that, or you're hearing me say that today, and it set you free. And I love that because that's a starting point. That's the starting point, knowing what a price Jesus paid just to know you, just to be with you, just to have relationship with you. That is grace upon grace upon grace. But if I'm being honest with you today, and I want to be honest with you today, some of you heard him say that there's nothing that you can do to get to God, which is true. But you use it as a license to be lazy sometimes. You use it as a license to be lazy. We're all guilty of this, I think. Because you know that you've received the grace of God and that you're going to heaven with him one day. And because that day is undetermined and we don't know when it is, we kind of just live life in the meantime. We kind of just live life for ourselves sometimes. We kind of just go back to this sinful nature that we once had because it's easy. And we keep living how we want, which is what Paul's talking about here. We're satisfying our sinful nature when instead the call of Jesus on our life when we meet him and when we know him is that we would what? Bear much fruit. We would bear much fruit. And so we make God in this culture, especially in the West, so many times we make God in our own image. Just like we've made church in our own image. And that's a hard truth to face because we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. We make God in our own image and we want to have comfortable life. It's not comfortable to have patience sometimes. It's not. It's definitely not comfortable to have self-control sometimes. Sometimes you don't feel a lot of joy. You don't think you have it. But can I tell you, the word is true when it says the joy of the Lord is our strength. The word is true when it says God gives a peace that surpasses all understanding. The word is true when it says his yoke is easy and his burden is light. His word is true when it says he never leaves us or forsakes us. But we've made church and God and this whole thing in our own image sometimes, and by doing that, we've just counted on someday. And we're not focused on living for him today. And it blows my mind how many people trust God to save them for all of eternity from separation from him, but they don't trust him with their everyday life. You don't trust him with your school. You don't trust him with your finances. You don't trust him with your marriage. You don't trust him with your friendships. But you trust him to save you from this eternal damnation. We've got it backwards. We look forward. I see Facebook posts all the time. Man, I'm ready for my mansion in heaven one day. But we don't even love his house on earth. We don't even go to his house on earth. We don't serve in his house. We don't care for his house. We don't speak highly of his house. We treat his house like an afterthought and a check on a to-do list. Why would he want us to have a heavenly mansion? He does. But why are we so focused on the one day when we could focus on the 2 day? Some of us come to church and we drink the coffee and we eat the donuts and we sing the songs and we take our kids back there and we post on Instagram later and tag us, and please do. We love seeing those. But Monday through Sunday, we're just living how we want to. When Jesus said, those who are my followers will bear much fruit. And not bearing that spiritual fruit, that love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, not bearing that is a good indicator that something's off in your spiritual life. It's a really good indicator that you need to check in with the Lord and say, Lord, where do I need to grow? Where do I need to bear more fruit? What bad fruit am I bearing that I should have cut off a long time ago? God's heart for you when you say yes to Jesus is that you would bear much fruit, and that you would not just be saved from your sins, but you would be saved for the glory of God to make a difference in this world. It's not just about salvation, it's about a relationship with him forevermore. And he came so that we could walk in the newness of life. The word doesn't say changed life, really. It says new life, completely different life. The old has gone, the new has come. And so I've always wondered this, like, if Jesus just wanted us to go to heaven, if that was the whole goal of salvation is just for us to go to heaven, why would he not just call us up there? As soon as we said yes to him, why would we not just be, beam me up, Scotty, like, go to heaven, okay? Why would he not do that? Because he has a purpose for us on earth, to bear fruit, to be his witness bearers, his image bearers to the world, so that those who are also dead now can be made alive. Those who are also lost can now be found. That is his heart for us, and that is why he wants us to bear fruit. Jesus actually said, you will know them, meaning my followers, by their fruit. And you hear us say all the time, it's our mission, our vision is that we would lead people in an encounter with God that always results in life change. I love it. But so many times we make life change about that altar moment and about when the emotions came and we met the Lord. But what do we do after the life change? What do we do with the life change? Is our life really changed if we're not bearing fruit and if we're not planted in the house of the Lord? So how does this all relate to say yes? What can you gain from it? How can you live differently? Well, there's something that's different than us a little bit than seeds. We're not just sitting on a bag on a shelf in Lowe's. We have free will. God gave us free will. And because he gave us free will and he doesn't force himself on us, we actually get to choose to be and stay planted. We get to choose what response we will have to the Lord. He offers his grace freely, and when we accept it, our life can change. But until then, it's still up to us to choose. And so for some of you in the room today, you have been tricked by the enemy. Hear me say this. You've been tricked by the enemy into thinking that church is your enemy, that God is your enemy, that God is out to get you, that every bad thing that happens in your life, God has just got his thumb on you and he's like, more, more, more. That is not what this says. That is not his heart for you. His heart is that you would flourish. His heart is that you would grow. Why do bad things happen? Because sin things happen. Because sin entered the world. I hear this phrase all the time. Why do bad things happen to good people? It's the wrong question, because there are no good people. There's no one good, not even one, except for the Lord. And so bad things entered the world when sin entered the world. It's the cost of doing business. It's just part of life. God's not sitting there thinking, how can I make their life harder today? Why would he have sent his son to die a death that you deserved if that's the way he felt? He wants you to come to him. So for some of you today, you have fallen on the path and you have made church and the people that hurt you in a church, and hear that. It's not the church that hurt you, it's people in a church that hurt you. You have made church your enemy. You have made God your enemy. You say, there is nothing good in that place. I could never, ever go there. Your first yes today needs to be yes to the Lord. He'll take care of the rest later. He'll take care of healing your wounds from the church. He'll take care of healing your wounds from the world. But he paid a price for you. He paid a price for you that you would be planted, deeply rooted, supported, and bearing much fruit. And from the moment that somebody says that first yes to the Lord, from the moment you say that first yes, you've got to recognize this, that Jesus becomes the gardener in your life. It reminds me, when Jesus died and was laid in the tomb, Mary is there in the garden and she's distraught because she thinks they've stolen his body. His body's not there. And she looks up and she sees a man who she doesn't recognize. She thinks it's the gardener, but it's actually Jesus. But the thing about her thinking that it was the gardener was that she's not wrong. That Jesus is the gardener. Back in the garden with Adam and Eve, when sin entered the world, that was the first step towards damnation. That was the first step towards separation from God. So how beautiful is it that in this moment, he appears to Mary and she thinks he's the gardener, that he redeems the garden of old into the garden of new, that he brings new life. And so you have to recognize when you say yes to Jesus that he's the gardener. And what does being a gardener look like? It means making plants flourish. Not if I'm the gardener, but if he's the gardener. He knows how to work the soil. He's the living water that helps the seed to grow. He's the light of the world that brings and shines his lights to all so that they would grow. The heat and the temperature of his Holy Spirit spurs us on to do good works and to grow. He's the gardener. And knowing that he is a gardener with a good heart and a green thumb should change your perspective on life. And I want everybody in the room today to hear this, that your life is never, say never, your life is never too messed up that Jesus can't make you flourish. You're never too far gone. You've never done enough bad stuff, because if you've never done enough good stuff to get to him, you've also never done enough bad stuff to get away from him. He loves you that much. And when bad stuff happens in your life, guess what? If he's the gardener, he can use it as fertilizer. Yeah, he can, and he will. And if he's the gardener, when things need to be pruned out of our life, he's going to get his shears out and he's going to prune. And it's not going to feel good to get those thorns out of there, those people out of there we should have never been surrounding ourselves with anyway, those habits that we keep turning back to instead of turning to him, those things we keep looking at on our phone or those places we keep going. It's not going to feel good when he says, no, we're going to cut that back. We're going to take that out. But he's doing it because he loves you that much, and because he cuts bad things, just like what I've learned about planting and growing and gardening, is that when you cut away the bad, the good grows more. When you cut away the bad, the good grows more. And so take heart. If you're in the garden today and you're wondering, where is God? Where is he? Who is he? He's there, and you may not recognize him. You may not recognize him, but he's there. He's the gardener, and he's Jesus. He is Jesus the gardener, and he calls you by name, and his desire for you is to flourish.